February 13th, 2026, 22:31 local time. The Arabian Sea. The USS Gonzalez is running dark. Emissions control protocol. Radars passive. Communications minimized. A 9,200-ton destroyer trying to be invisible in a sea full of watchers. Her mission is classified. What we know comes from after-action reports released months later. The Gonzalez was conducting intelligence-gathering operations approximately 85 nautical miles south of the Iranian port of Chabahar. She was alone. She was exposed. And the Iranians knew exactly where she was. At 22:31, a Fateh-313 short-range ballistic missile confirmed impact on the USS Gonzalez. I'm your host at U.S. Defense Review, where we analyze the military operations that shape global security. The attack on the Gonzalez represented something new. Not just another Iranian strike, but evidence that Iranian intelligence had penetrated American operational security. They knew where the ship would be. They knew when she would be there. And they planned their attack accordingly. What happened over the next 46 minutes would expose both an American intelligence failure and demonstrate the relentless capacity for American retaliation. Let's start with what went wrong. The Gonzalez's mission required her to operate in a specific patrol box, a defined area of ocean where her sensors could collect signals intelligence from Iranian military communications. The patrol box had been selected by intelligence analysts at 5th Fleet headquarters. The timing had been coordinated with satellite passes. Everything had been planned. Everything had also been compromised. According to declassified assessments, Iranian intelligence had obtained information about American naval movements through human sources, likely a contractor with access to unclassified but operationally sensitive scheduling data. The information wasn't precise enough to target individual ships, but it was precise enough to identify patterns. The Iranians had been watching the patrol box for 3 weeks. They had positioned a Fateh-313 battery within range. They had waited. On November 8th, the Gonzalez entered the box on schedule. The Iranians launched 17 minutes later. The Fateh-313 is a solid-fuel tactical ballistic missile. Range, 500 kilometers. Warhead, 450 kilograms. Accuracy, circular error probable of approximately 100 meters. Good enough for area targets. Marginal for hitting ships. But the Iranians had improved their guidance. The missile that struck the Gonzalez was equipped with an electro-optical terminal seeker, a camera system that compared real-time imagery with stored photographs of American warship profiles. When the missile reached terminal phase, it could recognize and track its target. This was a capability American intelligence had assessed as in development, but not yet operational. The assessment was wrong. At 22:14, the Fateh-313 launched from a concealed position in the Sistan Baluchistan province. The Gonzalez was operating under emissions control. Her radar was passive. She detected nothing. The missile climbed to apogee at 47 kilometers altitude, then began its descent. Terminal velocity, approximately Mach 4. At 22:28, the Gonzalez's electronic warfare systems detected unusual signals. The Fateh-313's terminal seeker transmitting targeting data. The system classified the signals as unknown emitter, possible threat. 3 minutes to impact. Lieutenant Commander David Park, the officer of the deck, faced a critical decision. Break emissions control and activate radar, or maintain cover and hope the unknown signal wasn't what it seemed. He chose to activate. At 22:29, the AN/SPY-1D radar lit up. The system immediately detected the incoming ballistic missile. Time to impact, 87 seconds. The Gonzalez carried SM-6 missiles capable of engaging ballistic targets, but the engagement window was brutally compressed. The fire control system needed time to calculate solutions. The missiles needed time to launch and accelerate. Time was running out. At 22:29:18, 2 SM-6 missiles launched. At 22:29:34, a third SM-6 launched. At 22:29:47, the Phalanx CIWS activated and began tracking. The first SM-6 reached intercept altitude at 22:30:42. The Fateh-313 was descending at Mach 4, its electro-optical seeker locked on the Gonzalez's distinctive radar profile. Missile SM-6 passed 65 meters behind the target. The Fateh-313's terminal maneuvers had thrown off the intercept solution. The second SM-6 was on a converging course. Intercept calculated in 8 seconds. At 22:30:49, the second SM-6 scored a proximity detonation. The blast fragmented the Fateh-313's airframe, but didn't destroy the warhead section. The warhead separated and continued falling, tumbling now, no longer guided, but still carrying 450 kilograms of explosive. The third SM-6 had no target. The missile's remains were too small and moving too erratically for tracking. The phalanx engaged the tumbling warhead at 22:31:01. The 20mm rounds struck the falling object multiple times. At 22:31:04, the warhead detonated. Altitude at detonation, 180 meters above the Gonzalez. An airburst. The effects were devastating. The blast wave struck the destroyer from above, a direction naval ships are not designed to withstand. The ship's upperworks absorbed the impact. Radar arrays were destroyed. Communications antennas were shredded. The bridge windows shattered. Fragments rained down on the weather decks. Sailors caught in the open were struck by supersonic debris. 4 men died instantly, killed by shrapnel that tore through body armor and flesh. Petty Officer First Class Michael Rodriguez, 34, from Texas. Petty Officer Second Class James Chen, 27, from California. Seaman Anthony Williams, 22, from Georgia. Seaman Apprentice Marcus Thompson, 19, from Ohio. 19 more sailors were wounded, 5 critically. The ship's medical staff began triage operations on the flight deck, where the wounded were being carried. The Gonzalez was blind. Her AN/SPY-1D radar was destroyed, all 4 arrays wrecked by the airburst. Her primary communication systems were offline. She couldn't see incoming threats. She couldn't call for help through normal channels. But she wasn't helpless. Captain Jennifer Walsh had been in the Combat Information Center when the missile struck. The compartment was below decks, protected from the airburst. She was uninjured, but her ship was crippled. Her first order: establish backup communications. The Gonzalez carried a SATCOM terminal that had survived the blast, mounted lower on the superstructure than the destroyed antennas. Her communications technicians rigged an improvised connection. Her second order: assess weapons capability. The vertical launch system was undamaged. The Tomahawk missiles were intact. The ship could still shoot. Her third order: begin targeting procedures for the launch site. At 22:38, Captain Walsh established contact with 5th Fleet. Her report was grim. 4 dead, 19 wounded. Ship combat ineffective for air defense. But she added something that would shape the response. Tomahawk capability intact. Ready to execute Counterstrike on your authorization. Vice Admiral Richardson received the report at 22:40. He was already aware of the attack. The USS Baton, operating 140 miles south, had detected the Fateh-313 launch and tracked its trajectory. Her crew had watched helplessly as the missile descended toward the Gonzalez's position. Now Richardson had a decision to make. The Gonzalez was damaged beyond her ability to defend herself. She needed escort support immediately. Ships to provide air defense while she made for port. That was the defensive priority. But defense wasn't the only priority. 4 American sailors were dead. A ship was wrecked. And the Iranians had demonstrated a new capability: precision guidance for ballistic missiles that could target specific vessels. If that capability wasn't addressed, more ships would be hit. More sailors would die. At 22:44, Richardson authorized a strike. But this strike would be different from previous responses. The Fateh-313 battery that had attacked the Gonzalez was a legitimate target. Destroying it was justified retaliation. But destroying one battery didn't address the larger threat. The real threat was the guidance system. The electro-optical seekers that turned ballistic missiles into precision anti-ship weapons. The facilities that developed them. The engineers who built them. Intelligence had identified a research complex in the city of Shiraz, 400 kilometers from the coast, where Iran's precision guidance systems were developed. The complex was hardened. It was protected by air defenses. It was far from the sea where American ships normally operated. It had never been on any previous target list. Richardson added it. At 22:48, the strike package finalized. Primary target Alpha, the Fateh-313 battery that attacked the Gonzalez. Tomahawk strike. 8 missiles. Coordinates confirmed by trajectory analysis. Primary target Bravo, the Shiraz Guidance Research Facility. B-2 Spirit strike, the only asset capable of penetrating that far inland against defended airspace. Secondary targets. 2 suspected missile storage facilities along the Sistan-Baluchistan coast. Tomahawk strikes. 4 missiles each. At 22:54, the Gonzalez began launching. The ship was blind, deaf, and bleeding. But her Tomahawk missiles didn't need the destroyed SPY radar. They had pre-programmed coordinates. They had GPS guidance. They could find their targets without help from the wounded ship that launched them. 4 missiles left the Gonzalez's VLS cells. 4 more would follow from the destroyer USS Porter, positioned 60 miles west. At 22:56, 2 B-2 Spirit bombers crossed into Iranian airspace. The bombers had launched from Diego Garcia 12 hours earlier. They had been orbiting over the Arabian Sea, waiting for a mission that might not come. When the Gonzalez was hit, they had a mission. The B-2 is the most survivable strike aircraft in the American arsenal. Its stealth characteristics make it nearly invisible to radar. Its range allows it to reach targets thousands of miles from the nearest American base. Its payload, 16 2,000-pound bombs, allows it to destroy hardened facilities that other aircraft cannot touch. Iran's air defense network never saw them coming. At 23:17, 46 minutes after the Gonzalez was hit, the first weapons struck. The Fateh-313 battery was engaged by Tomahawks approaching from the southwest. 8 missiles saturated a target area 200 meters in diameter. The launchers were destroyed. The radar vehicles were destroyed. The crew, estimated at 30 personnel, was killed. The secondary targets received their Tomahawks at 23:19 and 23:21. Post-strike analysis would confirm that 1 facility was legitimate, a storage bunker containing missile components. The other facility was a decoy that the Iranians had constructed to draw American fire. At 23:24, the B-2s reached Shiraz. The guidance research facility was built partially underground, with reinforced concrete structures designed to withstand conventional attack. It was defended by SA-15 and SA-20 surface-to-air missile systems. The defenses never engaged. The B-2s approached from the northeast, following a flight path that exploited gaps in radar coverage. They climbed to optimal release altitude, 40,000 feet, and dropped their weapons in a precisely calculated sequence. 32, GBU, 31, JDAMS fell toward the research complex. The bombs were a mix of standard penetrators and specialized bunker busters. The penetrators struck first, cratering the above-ground structures and collapsing the roofs of buildings. The bunker busters followed, driving through rubble and earth to detonate among the underground laboratories. The facility that developed Iran's precision guidance technology was destroyed. Later assessments estimated the casualties. Approximately 60 personnel, including at least 12 engineers with specialized expertise in electro-optical guidance systems. The equipment losses were significant, but ultimately replaceable. The expertise losses would take years to replace. At 23:31, the B-2s exited Iranian airspace. They had been over hostile territory for 35 minutes. They had not been detected. At 23:33, Captain Walsh received confirmation. All targets destroyed. She was standing on her shattered bridge, watching damage control teams work by emergency lighting. 4 of her sailors were dead. 19 more were wounded. Her ship would spend 6 months in repair. The battery that had killed them was eliminated. The facility that had built the guidance system was rubble. It wasn't justice. It was retaliation. The distinction mattered to lawyers and philosophers. It didn't matter much to Captain Walsh at that moment. The Gonzalez made way for Bahrain at reduced speed. The destroyer USS Mitcher provided escort, her radar and weapons, covering the space where the Gonzalez could no longer defend herself. The transit took 18 hours. One more sailor died en route, Petty Officer 3rd Class Sarah Mitchell, who had been critically wounded by shrapnel and whose injuries proved beyond the ship's medical capability. Final death toll, 5. The diplomatic response was explosive. Iran called the Shiraz strike terrorism, an attack on a civilian research facility that had nothing to do with military operations. They released images of destroyed buildings and grieving families. They demanded international sanctions against the United States. The United States released evidence that the Shiraz facility was directly connected to military guidance systems, contracts, photographs, technical documentation captured in previous intelligence operations. The Pentagon briefers were thorough and devastating. The international response was mixed. European allies questioned the proportionality of striking a facility 400 kilometers from the coast in response to a naval engagement. Russia and China demanded UN action. Several Middle Eastern states quietly expressed approval. Iran's missile capabilities threatened everyone in the region. No UN resolution passed. No sanctions were imposed. The diplomatic machinery churned without producing results. But something had changed. The Shiraz strike sent a message that previous strikes had not. America would hit not just the weapons that attacked, but the factories that built them. Not just the missiles, but the engineers. Not just the coast, but the heartland. No Iranian military facility was safe. No Iranian capability was beyond American reach. Whether that message would deter future attacks or provoke them remained uncertain. What was certain, the calculus of escalation had shifted again. Iran had demonstrated precision-guided ballistic missiles. America had demonstrated B-2 stealth bombers reaching deep into defended territory. Each side showed the other something new. Each demonstration raised the stakes. The USS Gonzalez returned to service after 6 months of repair. Her new crew included many sailors who had never served on a ship that had been hit. They trained differently now, practicing procedures for damaged ships, for casualties, for fighting blind. The Iranians rebuilt their guidance research program at a new location, deeper underground, better defended. They learned from the strike as the Americans learned from the attack. The cycle continued. Attack, response, adaptation, escalation. 46 minutes from impact to retaliation. That's how long it took to go from a wounded ship with dead sailors to bombs falling on a facility hundreds of miles from the sea. That speed, that reach, that precision defines modern American military power. And it defines the conflict in the Persian Gulf. Stay informed, stay vigilant. I'll see you in the next one.